little statement by Marisa Holmes about what was happening there 10 years ago in New York City, followed by a up-to-date analysis by Noah Fisher from New York City. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Marisa Holmes. I'm coming to you from Brooklyn, New York, and I was one of the original organizers of Occupy Wall Street in the summer of 2011, leading up to September 17th. I was involved throughout the occupation and after for years, and different Occupy offshoots, including Strike Debt and Occupy Sandy, as well as neighborhood housing struggles. I spent a lot of time thinking about Occupy. And I think to some degree it's still going on, that the seeds we planted in 2011 have blossomed into many different projects and movements, and that people who were part of that didn't forget. They didn't forget how powerful it was, how we could mobilize together. And I see it as an ongoing process with many ups and downs. This process of revolution, and that's really important to note, that Occupy was a revolutionary movement. It was not seeking particular reforms or making claims. It didn't fall within like the typical parameters of what a social movement is supposed to be. We're often taught in social movement theory that if you're a movement, you must have leaders, and you must have a clear program, and you must present this program to the authorities, whether they're political authorities or corporate authorities. And that's just not what we did. What we were engaging in was a prefigurative process of social change that sought to break down all of these ways that we relate to one another. And that is evident in the assembly itself, this directly democratic process, using consensus and hand signals and holding space to hear each other, right? The mic check is really this practice in active listening. You hear someone speak and then you have to repeat back to them what they said. And so it means that you're actually listening and considering what they had to say. And all the various working groups, the working groups were practicing what worker syndicates might look like, various tasks, right? And cooperating with one another. These are things that we're not encouraged to do in our day-to-day lives, right? We go to school, we go to work, we do these things in which there's a clear hierarchy and people in charge, and they tell us what to do. We're taught, like, if you're a working class person in the United States and elsewhere, you're taught to just take orders, from a very young age. And so what we were doing was really breaking that down, creating an alternative social space and political space to realize, the world that we wanted to see in the here and now, not waiting for like a big, moment of rupture or, the seizure of the state, the sort of, capital R revolution. Instead, making the revolution ourselves, small r revolution, so to speak. So that's what we were engaged in, and we were connected to this wave of global uprisings, all over in North Africa, in the Middle East, in Europe, and really, we're inspired by the taking of the squares, whether the Kasbah in Tunis or Tahrir in Cairo, or Saint-Ouen in Greece, or Rochelle Sol in Madrid. What is the space of the square? Let's remember that. The square in the sort of liberal democratic imaginary is the space of discourse. It's where you go to air your grievances and have these kinds of public political conversations. But even the nature of the public is broken down when you take over that space and create this directly democratic relational approach to politics. Because, all of a sudden you're not just talking about what program you want or what policy you want to change, but how you want to live your life, right? How we want to live together. And yeah, so like that's what happened in the space of the square. And that space in particular of Wall Street is very important. So Wall Street is not just like a stand-in for abstract ideas, or it's actually like an embodied space. Like it's a physical space. You go there, and there are material things that happen in that space, right? You can see to this day this line of wooden blocks where the wall used to be, the wall that the Dutch colonial settlement built. Their fort was on the end of the island there. And they built it to keep out invaders, to keep out the Lenape, the indigenous people of this land, to sell slaves along, to various merchants and people who would come through the area. There was a slave trade in the North, which is often overlooked. It's not just a Southern problem, it's an American problem. And, that space is also where the original headquarters of JP Morgan Chase was built. It's still there across from the stock exchange today. And they formed as a company in order to manage the water supply. They privatized the water of this area and sold it back to the residents. So, there's definitely an ecological component also. That site, that intersection in front of Wall Street is also where the US Customs House was built. It's where George Washington, signed the Bill of Rights. And it's, to this day, there's a statue that looks out at the stock exchange. So the political system and the economic system were very deeply linked in a physical space, which is Wall Street. And that's where we went. So, the intersections are clear. And the need to break down borders is clear from the beginning. What that means, actually breaking down borders and having this international interconnected movement is challenging the very foundation of the political and economic system that we live in, right? Like it's challenging conquest, it's challenging empire. And that's what's so transformative about it.